Welcome to the second part of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, Tales from the Final Day. On the first part of this series, I described the difficult world settings and the rules of this challenge. The goal of the challenge is to survive a full month, while being limited to 4 characters. If all 4 characters die, then the challenge is lost. If you would like to download this shared world and play it yourself, the link is in this video's description. I have already lost 1 life, Justin Roses, a mechanic who was eaten by zombies in the darkness of a crowded hospital. An unfortunate end, so close to his beginning. Despite my planning, he survived for just 2 minutes. Now, the torch is passed to our current survivor, Foster Punch Meyer, a mall cop who, at the time of the Cataclysm, found himself climbing to the roof of an apartment building. In the first few minutes of the Cataclysm, Foster cautiously led a dozen zombies off the roof of the apartment and down to their hopefully permanent deaths, using nothing but the shroud of darkness and his flashlight to lure them off the edges of the rooftop. He then began to explore the 6th floor of the apartments over the course of half an hour. There remain 5 more floors which have not been explored. Foster hopes that not too many zombies will still reside inside. Foster has been considering whether to barricade the apartment building's central stairwell, which would separate the top floors from the hellish world outside. He could survive on the supply of food he has been able to find in each apartment's kitchen. If he can clear more floors of this apartment, his supply could last him until the end of this challenge. Foster may be able to survive from this one building alone, but he still has a lot of bloody work ahead of him. It is still the first day of the Cataclysm, and Foster is just beginning his survival. So then, let us continue to see whether Foster can survive this first day, and from there, whether he can survive the full month required to win this challenge. It is 2:32 a.m., just 30 minutes since all hell burst forth into the life of Foster Punch Meyer. Already, he has acquired a durable rain jacket, a toolbox, a nearly empty lighter, and a bullwhip, in addition to his mall cop equipment of an extendable baton and a flashlight. The top floor has just 1 apartment remaining. He searched through it, finding some more food. Now, the 6th floor was clear. He headed down to the 5th floor, shining his light down this floor's hallway. It seemed empty. A lucky break, although there could still be zombies inside the rooms, at least the hall was safe. He went down to the 4th floor. This floor's hall was also empty, although Foster noticed a broken door at one end of the hall. Likely a zombie had broken in. He moved to investigate, readying his bullwhip. Inside, both the glass door to the balcony and the kitchen window had been broken. He'd seen a similar scene upstairs. Likely, whoever was inside this apartment had turned and rampaged their way out of the apartment's 4th floor window, likely leaving little but a bloodstain below. The sound of them breaking glass may have drawn the attention of a zombie from outside in the hall, who broke in the door and then wandered through the window themselves. This confirmed Foster's hopes that the apartment would be easy to clear. It seemed that more and more of the zombies had terminated themselves. His plan now was to clear the rest of the halls before boarding up the stairwell from as low down in the apartment building as possible. But his mind began to have a creeping fear. The zombies who fell down, did they survive? Would they attempt to climb back up into their former homes? If he were to set up his staircase barricade too high, he would not have enough food to survive the month. too low, and he risked alerting zombies who may still be clinging to unlife at the street level below. The exact point where his greed would become his death was unknown to him. Foster was now down at the 3rd floor. As he turned the stairs, he was met with a zombie staring back at him, now moving towards him. He led it up the stairs and over the edge of the 7th floor rooftop. He went back to the 3rd floor. This floor's hall was clear, and so Foster went further down to the 2nd floor. As he turned his flashlight on, a zombie child turned to face his light, and Foster led it up to the rooftop and over the edge of the tower, like so many others. Back down to the 2nd floor, Foster stepped into the hallway and shined his light down to the ends of the hall. This floor was unique. It seemed that there was a rooftop of sorts at one end, where he could see the crumpled, twitching body of one of the creatures who had fallen from a window above. Nearly every apartment door on the 2nd floor had been broken, either into or out of, as the inhabitants were zombified. He clicked his flashlight off as he navigated towards the twitching victim of gravity. There was a hole in the ground between himself and the body, which was strange. Perhaps the zombies had smashed clear through the floor, or perhaps something below had destroyed a wall. A locked door prevented Foster from moving to the other side of the hole. If the twitching corpse did rise again, it would likely fall down through the ceiling into the 1st floor below. As Foster searched the rampaged rooms on the 2nd floor, he found a pair of binoculars and a matchbook with 9 matches. Now he could start around 20 fires, which could be enough to survive a month. While searching, he heard a noise behind him. He turned to see a zombie entering the apartment, blocking his exit. Foster circled around it in the kitchen, and the zombie grabbed him, but he wrestled free and ran to the stairs. As carefully as he tried to move, the zombie did tear his light jacket as he led it up through the staircase. Foster himself was not much injured, and before long, the zombie was dealt with. Seeing the rampaged state of the 2nd floor, Foster was convinced that the street level was likely overflooding with zombies. He needed to barricade the stairwell immediately, before others from the 1st floor could climb back up as they wandered in all directions. He searched the 2nd floor for planks of wood. While searching, he made himself a makeshift sling out of a curtain to help hold the planks and nails as he scavenged through the busted doors. Foster began to realize that these stairs could not be able to be boarded up as easily as he had hoped, unless he was to go down to the 1st floor and build the barricade in front of the staircase completely. But as Foster readied himself to go downstairs, he realized a strong zombie was waiting just below him. It likely had smelled him while he was preparing the wooden planks for his barricade. He stood on the threshold of the 1st floor, unable to go downwards. His plan was falling apart. If he couldn't barricade the stairs, he couldn't block the entire building off from the outside world. He would be forced to deal with the zombies flooding in and up the stairs over the ensuing weeks. He would be forced to live in fear of the zombies approaching any time while he slept, read, or worked. There must be another way to barricade the building, if only he could break the stairs, or rather than risk being blocked at the 2nd floor, Foster picked up as many planks as he could and climbed back up to the 3rd. He would need time to think about how best to block off the stairs. As he left, a zombie trailed behind him. He left it on the 2nd floor. Judging by how difficult it was to get the zombies to follow him all the way up, it would likely be wandering around there for a long time. Foster had a sense for what he wanted to build, but was unsure of how to pull it off. He decided that it would be a good idea to collect all the books from the apartments together at the top floor. Based on what he knew now about how the apartment was constructed, the top floor was surely the safest place to be. He chose a room at the southwest corner of the apartment to stay in. He had broken down its door earlier and set aside the materials to rebuild a makeshift door for when the dawn light came. Foster didn't want to waste his flashlight, as so far as he knew, it was the only one in the building. He went through the neighboring apartment, taking storage furniture, such as wardrobes, drawers, and bookshelves. Foster planned to rush through the cleared floors of the building, organizing the items that each vacated resident had left behind. Having these shelves set up beforehand would make it a much more orderly process. Foster emptied his pockets to be able to carry more loot, keeping with him only his extendable baton and flashlight. He then began to search through the apartments down on the 3rd floor. He bashed through the locked apartment doors using his extendable baton. Slowly the sun was rising on this first dawn, as Foster searched the apartment's middle floors for food and supplies. While searching, he found an atomic lamp, once considered a gimmick similar to a nightlight before the apocalypse. Now it is a near-everlasting light source of atomic-powered light. While the atomic lamp's light did not reach far, it would be perfect for working during the nighttime or anywhere natural light didn't enter. Foster attached the lamp to himself so that it didn't use a hand, and continued taking everything of value from the apartments up to his top floor sanctuary. He had finished scavenging through the apartment's top 3 livable floors at 6:16 a.m. He hesitated to gather from the low 2nd floor. Although it would boost his supplies by around 33%, he worried that there could be zombies wandering around it. Foster had stored many things in the shelves and cabinets up in his sanctuary. Some highlights are 25 firecrackers, a first aid kit, jumper cables, 5 sewing kits, 2 charcoal cookers, 3 lawnmowers, 2 canning pots, 9 rolls of duct tape, as well as a huge collection of books of all kinds, including mostly recipes for cooking, hobby crafting, and home electronics. This is the collective riches of 24 apartments, and as far as Foster expects his month to go, it is nearly everything he will ever need. With all the food in his kitchen, he began to calculate the total number of calories according to their expiration date. Within the next 24 hours, 12,916 calories will expire. That's roughly 6 times what he can consume in a day, or enough to survive an additional 6 days if he can preserve it properly. Most of this imminently expiring food is highly nutritious milk, taken from fridges of the apartment building. It's worth trying everything Foster can do right now to preserve this 6 days of potentially wasted food. As a mall cop, Foster doesn't know the first thing about cooking. Working at the mall, he has always had ready-made food available in the food court. So far, he's found cookbooks through his scavenging of the apartment, but the milk may expire too quickly for him to read these cookbooks and learn what to make. More than that, the amount of charcoal that his charcoal burners have available would likely only make 1 of a half dozen of jugs into everlasting powdered milk. An already skilled cook would be able to turn this milk into biscuits or powdered milk immediately, but Foster is no skilled cook. He ate 3 small yogurt cups, drank the remainder of a fridge milkshake, and then twisted off the lid of a jug of milk and drank it until he could drink no more. Before he committed to learning how to process the milk into a way that would last for longer, he calculated out the total calories that would expire between tomorrow and the day following. Another 6,808 calories will expire the next day. Most of this will be pizza and other pre-made fridge foods that Foster cannot separate. For instance, he's not about to dissect a burger and separate the bun into the pile of food that lasts longer and the burger patty into a pile that will expire tomorrow. Apparently, that's something reserved only for the truly insane. Foster began to consider what it would take to get a power generator running. If he could provide power from, say, the solar panels on the roof to a fridge, his milk problems would be over. He could just freeze the milk, along with anything else perishable. As a note, in my research I found that apparently real-world milk does expand when frozen, but the jugs aren't made with this in mind, so if you ever need to freeze milk for whatever reason, you should either pour some of it out before freezing the jug, maybe into a second container, or move all the milk into a plastic freezer bag. Turns out that Canadians with their bagged milk were right all along. I also find it funny that milk is the largest of Foster's concerns right now, and rightfully so, as it represents an added 6 days worth of nutritious calories. As it turns out, in the first days of the apocalypse, milk matters. Foster is decent at electronics and is more apt at setting up a generator than dehydrating the milk or baking it into goods. But in order to set up a generator, he will need certain materials. Most importantly, a battery capable of holding enough charge to power a fridge overnight. Foster brought a toolbox with him to the roof and deconstructed one of the solar panel fixtures. As he removed the solar panel, he started to think about the actual requirements for this generator. In his mind, he would need to push beyond 2 more levels of electronics, a level of fabrication, and a level of mechanics. Doing this within the precious few hours that the milk had left would be very straining. As a note, I'm using a mod called Aftershock. This mod adds a recipe to convert a dormant refrigerator into one that can be mounted and powered on a vehicle. You can use vehicles in this game without wheels as stationary machines, in my case to power a refrigerator. Foster now has the choice between learning how to dehydrate the milk, which would take a shorter amount of time than to learn how to build a generator. There are a few unknowns with the generator, but if built, it will help not only the milk, if it's even complete before the milk expires, but also the other fridge food that will otherwise expire over the next days to weeks. While the dehydrating would get Foster producing results immediately, the generator is a much longer-term plan that will probably secure a larger amount of calories overall. An electrical system is relatively easy in Cataclysm. There are 3 parts. There's a power source, in my case the solar panels, as well as a battery to hold the power, and then a power drain, which would be my fridge. Foster still needs a battery before he has those 3 pieces figured out. Now, a car battery or other vehicle battery would usually be perfect, but I am fairly sure that Foster would die if he were to walk around on street level, even during the night. We will need to either find some electronics to disassemble for their batteries and connect these smaller batteries into chains, which would add up their individual capacities together as one big battery, essentially making larger batteries from groups of smaller ones. But to do that, he would need solder, which he doesn't have. He could disassemble some things to make solder. His jumper cables would produce 25 solder plus 100 copper wire. There was a television in the room that would have electronic scraps. The domestic electronics in the apartments looked like they would have enough to get a battery made. Foster decided to go ahead and begin scrapping these components. Time was ticking as the milk was expiring. Each action had to fit the mission. He needed to craft a makeshift soldering iron to take the television screen apart for electronic scrap. Foster remembered noticing an electronic talking doll in one of the apartments, which theoretically would have the electronic scraps he needed, but he couldn't find it in his storage. He wondered whether he had forgotten to pick it up, or if it had walked away on him. This cataclysmic world was so strange to him that he did not rule a walking doll out of possibility. He remembered vaguely where he had first seen the doll. Perhaps he had seen it but not picked it up. It had been downstairs, on either the third or second floor at the south side of the building. But Foster knew there was a zombie on the second floor now, so he checked the floor above it first. He looked through the third floor, but with no sight of the doll. He went down to the dangerous second floor. As his atomic lamp dimly lit his surroundings, he couldn't see whether the zombie that had come up here was still here or not. He rushed through the second floor and looted these apartments while searching for the talking doll. After looking through 4 apartments, he still couldn't find the damn thing. Was Foster going insane? Had there even been a talking doll to begin with? He had searched thoroughly the dangerous second floor, maddened by the ability of this possessed doll to escape his grasp. Even more so, as he would have disassembled this doll for electronic scrap. After he began to worry that he had lost too much time to this cursed doll, he was forced to accept as reality that this doll had somehow escaped. He knew what he had seen. Not only had all humans turned into zombies, but talking dolls were now also capable of moving of their own free will. Foster disassembled a lawnmower and then took apart its engine, pouring the gasoline into some glass jars he had in the kitchen. He still needed a battery. Foster searched around and found himself on a balcony looking at a cooling unit. After taking the unit apart, he found various mechanisms related to refrigeration, but he still needed a battery. Foster took apart a computer console and finally found the electronic scrap he needed. He made himself a makeshift soldering gun. He set to disassembling the jumper cables, as these would be the fastest way to get solder. He believed with the additional cooling materials from the balcony's air conditioners, he could even turn the fridge into a full freezer. But he still needed to learn exactly how to fit it all together. 2 levels of electronics, 1 level of fabrication, and 1 level of mechanics were still needed. Looking over his book collection, he pulled out 5 books and magazines related to these skills. He started to read over their indexes for leads. 101 crafts for beginners could bring his fabrication up. Under the hood could raise his mechanics. But for electronics, although the recipes in the book Ham Radio Illustrated were useful, he couldn't learn anything more from the book alone. For electronics, he could only learn from practice. This meant raising his electronics 2 whole levels through hard work. He searched through the radio book for recipes that would be useful. If he was going to spend a lot of time working on electronics, he might as well make something worthwhile. He started with a battery recharging station. This would take a lot of solder, so he took apart a television's large LCD screen. As he worked on the recharging station, he was having difficulty. It was nearly done, but he needed more solder. He took apart another television. It was past noon now. By 2:56 p.m., the recharging station was complete. Foster had gained just 19% of his way up to level 3 electronics, and he needed to get to 4. At this rate, it would take him around 10 hours to get to level 3, and perhaps another 10 to get to 4. But the majority of time was spent disassembling TVs for solder. If he made recipes that were light on solder, he could go faster. 2 recipes caught his eye: the backup beeper and the noise emitter. By crafting the backup beeper first, he could then use it as an ingredient to craft a noise emitter. 2 recipes for a cost of 10 solder, plus a small amount of common materials. These recipes wouldn't just help him gain experience, a noise emitter could also be a powerful tool. If he were to throw it from the windows of the apartment, it could draw zombies out of the building. If the noise emitters could last for long enough, he could even have enough time to construct his ideal barricade at the bottom of the stairs. Even more, he could possibly use them to reach a car battery in the streets outside. This plan could be exactly what he needs to empty the bottom floor of the apartments. That is where we will end this episode of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, Tales from the Final Day. Next episode, we will continue on Foster's mission to survive a month in this challenge world. Once again, this is a public challenge world. If you'd like to give this shared world a shot, I have a saved file with the world available in the video's description. One interesting thing about shared worlds is that the location should be common. The towns, cities, and other places should be the same for you as well. I imagine it's a bit like watching a zombie movie and then stepping into that world and trying to survive on your own. Behind the scenes, I had some major computer issues while making this episode. My hard drive where I thought I had Cataclysm installed on went kaput, and I actually recorded about half of this episode on our next character. I even recorded a whole spiel about how Foster had been swallowed up by an interdimensional rift. But he's back. If Foster dies now, I have already started our third character, who I'll tease would be the prisoner. But if all goes well for Foster, we will never have to play him. Because after investigating my computer troubles further, I found out that my original save file with Foster was still intact, and I was able to recover it. The root of my problem was that my Windows installation had broken, probably due to a device driver or something, and I installed Windows again on a different drive, and was able to still access all of my old files on the other one. So to put it simply, this episode was a bit rough behind the scenes. If it turned out smooth, I'll be pretty happy. In addition, I've also been searching for zombie movie footage. I'm hoping that some of the clips I use may inspire you to check out the movies they're from. A lot of zombie movies are available on YouTube. It seems to be a really solid platform for independent filmmakers. I can recommend a movie search database as well. It's called the MovieDB, and this is the best one I've come across in my travels. Along with reviews on IMDb, this is how I've been finding my movies. So take care, and I look forward to the next episode of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, Tales from the Final Day.